Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Let's Talk TEFL. I'm Jackie, and joining me is...
I'm Jen. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We were just talking before we started recording that I am doing some training for the IELTS Speaking Test examiner starting tomorrow, or actually tonight and then tomorrow. So I'll let you guys know how that goes. It will be interesting. It's my first time doing something like that. So
yeah, I'd really like to know how it goes. I've had quite a few friends who have done it in the past, and it seemed like very selective and quite rigorous application and training process, but well paid.
yes, for sure. I'm a little bit nervous. I have to do a test with like a real person who's actually doing the IELTS. So I don't know. I hope it goes well. I feel like, but I have 3 chances. So that gives me confidence that even if I, do a terrible job, I get 2 more chances. So hope for the best. We'll see. How it goes.
Indeed.
All
I'm
right.
sure it'll be fine.
I
But
think it will
do they give you feedback after each chance, or do they just say try again?
Oh, interesting. I'm not sure about that actually. But during the training, we do some practice sessions.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sure I'll get lots of feedback then. Hopefully. Yeah, I'm sure they want everybody to pass, obviously, that they select. So I think hopefully it'll be good. We'll see. So what's up with you, Jen?
I went to traveling this past weekend. We went to Sochi, which was where the Winter Olympics were held at some point in the past. I think the not too distant past.
But... No, recently, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. They never keep up with the Olympics.
There wasn't like 2014 or whatever, like plastered over the whole city.
Yeah. And it was a really nice town. It's like a really long seaside town because I guess everybody wants to live on the seaside. So nothing is really inland. Everything's just like they just made it longer and longer and longer instead of like wider.
Interesting. That sounds nice though. That sounds like a fun time.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was really nice. We had a big balcony. We were directly on the water, so it was like right below our balcony was the promenade and then the beach.
Oh,
so yeah, it was really nice. And I got some stalker photos of old Russian men wearing like the European man bikini.
That sounds horrifying, but
no, it was great because it wasn't a sandy beach. It was like a rocky beach. Like, I don't know, Europe is full of rocky beaches, I guess. And because not even the ocean, is the Black Sea. And he was fully sprawled out, no towel, nothing, just like I'm hoping that I have some sort of photo application that I can add like a police chalk line around his body, because he was like starfished face down, and then when he rolled over he had like chunks of gravels just stuck into his skin.
What is going on? That sounds so crazy. But funny.
It was definitely a highlight of the weekend for me.
Nice. Well, on that exciting note, I think we should talk ESL Warm-Ups, Jen. So,
yes, okay.
And so we're going to start off with a few quick reasons why we want to use warm-ups in class. And then we'll share, I think we have 6 or 7 of our favorite ESL warm-ups. So we'll give you kind of the quick run through on them. So the number one reason why we want to use warm-ups is that students often will not have spoken a word of English since they were last in your class. So I like to ease students into my class. Kind of get them to like warm up their brains. And I don't like jumping right into the most important thing in the lesson in the first like 10 seconds, because it's like deer in headlight kind of thing. They're like, what's going on? Like my brain is not even thinking in English. All right.
Exactly. Yeah, especially for students who are taking English sort of against their will, which I think in a lot of places is the majority of students. Either their parents have enrolled them or it's a required class. So they literally have not thought about English other than maybe doing their homework since the last time they were in class. And so you do need that sort of transition. Otherwise, it's like when you turn up to class and your teacher's like, right, take out a piece of paper. And you're like, oh, I remember nothing. I don't even know the name of this class anymore.
Where am I? It's true. All right. So what's our second reason, Jen?
It is a low stress beginning to class. Like, I like to do something that does not put a lot of pressure on the students to think of anything like beyond whatever vocabulary they might need. And even then, I like to keep it pretty low key, again, to reduce that deer in the headlight sort of feeling. I want them to remember, like, oh yes, I do know these words. I can do this. It's kind of the quick win, if you will, for the students.
For sure. All right. Our next one is dealing with late students. So this is actually one of my pet peeves. I'm almost never late. So it's like my students who are always late. I'm like, get your stuff together and get to class on time. Yes. But I do not like jumping right into the most important thing right away, because there's inevitably at least a few students who are late, and that just means starting over and distracting. But if my students are doing a little warm-up game or activity, it doesn't actually matter that much if students are late, because they just won't do that activity, which is not actually the most important thing in the lesson. And then I can everybody will be in their seats ready to learn, and then I'll start the most important thing.
Yeah, I have to say that was one of the things that I did not like about teaching older students. When kids are late, chances are it's because their parents have too many activities stacked up for them, or their parents were just running late, bringing them to class. Very rarely did I have students who were late because they were just, screwing around with their friends outside. Whereas when I taught adults and they would come in, just stroll on in, 10 minutes late, coffee cup in hand, I would just want to punch them in the face and just be like, that is so rude. I never would have done that as a student myself. Like, I would have had the decency, if I was running late, to at least not come in with a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I know that was my experience teaching in universities, but I had to give like participation points in my class, which I think is kind of ridiculous. We can talk about that on a future episode, but I was forced to. So it was like 2 points per class or something like that. So if they were late, they got -1. And I was like, if you have to run. It's like just how it is. But unless it was like their previous class had ended late and then all of them were late, which I was like, sure, whatever. Like, I didn't care. But if like everyone else made it on time and that one person was late, I was like, something is not quite right here for sure.
Yeah, obviously. And when I was teaching adults, I understand you can't always, leave work when you might want to, especially like in Korea, where, your boss might be like, oh, it's time. You thought it was time to go home, but I think 20 minutes from now we'll start a meeting, so I get that. But when students that I knew were full-time students, no job, like literally the only thing on their plate was to turn up to class on time, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's a talk for another episode.
Anyway,
so
yes,
indeed. And so the next one we have is review. So I'm all about review. Students have to see things like so many times, or anyone learning a language has to see something so many times before it actually sticks. So I love to ensure they can do it at home, but I love to help out my students by doing it in class. So I'll often review something we had learned in the previous class as a warm-up in the next one.
Yes, and I find that students will recognize something and get bored with it long before they've actually acquired it as something that they can produce. So the more that, obviously you want to give some things for homework or whatever, but then also kind of cycle through and bring it up again and again in class in different ways, in different segments of the lesson, including warm-ups. And then they get exposed to it in a bunch of different ways, and hopefully eventually it'll seep into the back of their brain.
For sure. Okay,
Maybe
so what's the
part of
next?
their
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, the next one is informal assessment.
Sorry to
Am I
cut you
taking
off.
too long with our warm up?
Yeah, I feel like our warm up is like dragging on. I think our listeners are probably like, "What's going on? I just want the activities." Anyway, sorry. We only have two more, everybody, if that's the case.
Informal assessment. So if your warm up is leading up to a new lesson or some new information that's building on the old information, you want to sort of see where they are. Have they, really learned the previous information, or do you need to maybe evaluate your lesson plan on the fly and maybe change it up a little bit if your students aren't ready for it? Or you can see that they've really got it down and you can speed things up a bit.
For sure. Okay. And then our final one is you can create interest or set the context for the lesson that will come. So any language that I teach, I always try to give students some situations in which they can actually use the language.
Yes.
Just so it's cemented together inside their brains. It's like,
Yes.
oh, this situation. Oh, I know the sentences or whatever I can use in this situation. So yeah, I sometimes will use the warm up to kind of generate interest in a certain set of vocabulary or help students activate their prior knowledge about a certain thing. Yeah, it depends on the lesson. Sometimes it works better than others. So yeah, so often I'll use the warm up for that.
Yeah, but that is a good use of the warm up time as well.
For sure. Yeah, maybe one of the best. I think that and review definitely are my two kind of like go-to things during the review. All right, it's time. Let's get into our, we actually have top six ESL warm-up activities. So I have the first one of my favorites is Just a Minute. So this is a speaking activity for higher level students. So I write up a bunch of topics on the board like hobbies, sports, family, weekend, I don't know, just whatever, anything really. And then I put students into groups of 4 and I get one of the students to scrunch up a paper ball and throw it at the board. And then they hit a topic, say hobbies. And then the students will have numbered themselves 1, 2, 3, 4 inside their groups. And all the number ones have to talk about hobbies for 1 minute without stopping. That's their challenge to see if they can do it. It's no preparation time. It's just on the fly. And the other 3 students in their group have to listen, and then they have to ask 1 or 2 follow-up questions when that person is done speaking. So that keeps them engaged as well and gives them a reason to listen because they have to ask a follow-up question based on something that they heard. And then I repeat the process with number 2, 3, and 4 with a different topic. And yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
students like it.
That's a really good activity. I like that one too. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so I guess moving right along then, my first activity is flashcard 20 questions. So again, this could either be used for review or an informal assessment if you're introducing a couple of new things and you want to see if they know what they are, but I prefer to use it more for review. And the 20 questions just works with each student is given a card and they don't show it to the other students, and the students play 20 questions to kind of guess what it is. So you can do it with animals, you can do it with activities, or anything that reasonably students could win it in a game of 20 questions. And then if you want to have points or whatever, students can collect the cards that they have correctly guessed, or get points, or they can work in teams. However you want to do it, if you want to add in a little element of points or competition. But generally speaking, especially with younger students, they generally like 20 questions.
I really like that. I sometimes play 20 questions, but I maybe foolishly just let students pick anything. And it's like sometimes they pick the most random thing that none of the other students know, and it's so dumb. Like I regret it every time it happens. But using a flashcard, that I just honestly had never thought of that. I feel like I should have at this point in time.
It limits it, which I also like, because again, yeah, students will come up with really random stuff if they have no limits, which can be fun sometimes, especially if you have really, like I've taught really high level young students, and that does make it a bit more fun. But especially with low level students, if there's flashcards and then the students are right away sort of attuned to the fact that these words should all belong to the same category, either, like I said, animals or daily routine activities or hobbies or whatever, so that limits it and it makes it a little bit easier for them.
Nice. All right. So our next one is the alphabet game. So I use this in two situations. One is to review vocabulary, maybe from a previous lesson, if it was a vocabulary focused one. Or I use it if we're talking about something like hobbies or weather or sports or animals that I suspect students have maybe studied like 30 times before, which is often the case for those popular topics. Yes. So I want to help my students activate their prior knowledge. So I put students into pairs or groups of 3, and then I have them write down the alphabet on a piece of paper, just like top to bottom. So like A, B, C, D. And then I give them a category, say like animals, and they have to try to think of one animal for each letter. So like cat, duck, fish, tiger, etc. And it's a really quick game. So it's only like 1 or 2 minutes, depending on the level. And then the team with the most animals at the end is the winner. And for each letter, you can only come up with one animal. And if you want to do like make it a little bit more interesting for higher level students, and you have a small class, a large class, this is like way too crazy to do this, but in a small class, you can say, okay, if you have the same animal as another team, you don't get a point. So you have to like push yourself. Instead of saying dog, you could say like duck or dolphin or something like a little bit more interesting in order to get the point.
Yeah, I like to do that way. I like to sort of give extra credit, if you will, for thinking of something a little less common or, pushing themselves, but also the time factor. I might, if I've got a big screen, I'll put up like a stopwatch. And so they've got that very clear ticking clock, because otherwise there will always be students who are like, I'm still thinking. And you're like, well, we're going to be 12 minutes into class. Yeah.
All right. So what's your next one, Jen?
My next one is Odd One Out. I love this game. So this is like from Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other. And you have 4 things. And the students have to decide which one doesn't fit. So I like to do this where it's ambiguous. So there might be 2 that you could argue are the odd one out, depending on, how you do it. So you might have like 4 animals with wings, but, one is a bat, so it's a mammal, or, one is an emu, so it doesn't fly, so the kids can then, the students can then like discuss and argue, why they have the correct answer.
I love it. Yeah, so I always require students to tell me why they chose the answer. Yeah. That just takes it for sure to the next level.
Yeah. But I like to make them think a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can do this, like, obviously there's so many ways you can do it, but you could do some where like tomato is a fruit, and then there's like 3 other fruits, but maybe one is a banana and you peel a banana, and the other ones don't have peel that you have to take off. There's a lot of ways that you can do it, and it's good to see how the students come up with their reasoning.
I like it. I like that activity a lot, and yeah, I would use it at least a couple times during the semester for sure. All right, so the next one is a conversation starter. So I went to this co-TESL presentation years ago, and someone was talking about like teaching speaking, and she said she would just give her students a topic and tell them to talk to their partner, like free talking time for 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of each class. And my response was, that's good for like higher level students, but what about lower level students who are struggling? Just talking for 10 minutes about like hobbies. I can't even, like, if someone told me to do that in Korean, I'd be like, I could probably say, what's your hobby? How often do you play?
Right.
Who do you play with? And then it would be done. That's like literally like I couldn't come up with any more questions. So I just was like, oh, that's not that I ever did that, but I just was like, oh, that's kind of like not a pedagogically sound method for teaching.
They would have to be both high level and self-motivated, I think. And I'm sure, I have had students that I could say, yeah, you can talk about anything you want as long as it's in English. And they were high level enough that they were fine with that. But that was not my average student.
No. So the better way is that I love to give some conversation starters. So for example, if we're talking about like hobbies, I'll use this as kind of a lead in or setting the context activity. And I'll give students like a little list of say 5 or 10 questions related to hobbies and tell them, okay, talk to your partner about it. And I encourage like follow-up questions, free flowing conversation. But I always just make a point of saying, okay, these questions are for like emergency use. Instead of not talking, choose a question from the sheet. But I said, just try, turn it over and see if you can just talk without it. But then if you need it, you have it and look on the sheet. And students seem to understand that. They would get it. Like they would make an attempt and then, then they would use a question from the sheet. And that way people were just talking in English the whole time. Nobody was just sitting awkwardly in silence with nothing to say.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And another way you could do this would be like, for example, if the topic was hobbies, you could maybe have a list of hobbies for a pair to sort of go through, be like, I've done this before, or this is my hobby, or, I tried it, but I didn't think it was fun, or something like that. And they can go through and they can just have some point of like common ground to begin with, which if they're quite low level, that's, yeah, like you said, you would say, what's your hobby? How often do you do it? But especially if you have students who really don't want to have a conversation in English, they're so likely to just be like, I don't have hobbies.
I sleep. Sleeping is my hobby.
Yes, my hobby is sleep. My hobby is watching TV, but
computer
there's
games.
no TV show that I like. Computer games, but I can't name a single computer game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I like that idea too.
Just give them some common ground to start with.
All right. And then moving into, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, just saying, moving along into the final one of the warm-up activities, ESL Tic-Tac-Toe. So everyone I think knows tic-tac-toe or noughts and crosses, whatever you might call it. It's just a grid of 9 spaces and you fill it in with X's and O's. But to make it more ESL friendly, you can add a language point. So a very simple one would be, put in, if you're studying like irregular past, put in present tense verbs, 1 in each block, and then the student has to say the past tense, or they have to make a sentence using the past tense. Or if you're working on, I don't know, like tag questions or something, they have to create a tag question using whatever keywords you've put in the block. And you can either do it where they can see and then choose like which block they want to use based on what they know they can do, or you can flip it over, like you can have them taped to the board, flipped over, and then they choose the block that they want, and then they have to flip it over and get a challenge.
I like that a lot. I've never done that in my classes. I don't think.
That for a long time, I taught at a school where my maximum class size was 6. So I was able to do a lot of activities like this with the whiteboard that maybe you would have to have an alternate way of doing it. Like I think if I was doing it with a class with 20 or 30 students, I would just Xerox off some starter like tic-tac-toe blocks that had all of the challenges just written in the blocks, and then there was no like that part of the challenge would be gone, but it would be more manageable for a large group.
Yeah, I was thinking for like my university students, I would have just put them in pairs, and then I would have, just like made up, say like on a sheet, like 9 tic-tac-toe grids, and then filled in, pre-filled in with the words, and then they could play like 9 little tic-tac-toe challenges, and then maybe the winner would be the one who gets like the best of 9 or whatever, or something like that. I think would work really well.
Yeah.
All right. So any final thoughts on ESL warm-up activities, Jen?
Well, I sure would like to know where I could get some great ideas for. Is that a seamless segue?
Yeah, that was really good. That was great. So Jennifer and I actually wrote a couple books about ESL warm-up activities. So you can have a look on Amazon or Apple Books or the Google Play Store or wherever you like to buy books. And they are called 39 ESL warm-ups for kids and 39 ESL warm-ups for adults. And then, or you could search for Jackie Bolen and Jennifer Booker Smith on Amazon, and then you'll find them super easily there.
Yes.
And I think most of the activities that we've mentioned are from that book, actually. If you like those, then there's 33 more of them.
Well, probably 35 or so more. We might have had a new one in here.
I know. I didn't actually look at the book. I came up with the things I was going to talk about off the top of my head. So it's hard to say if they're in the book or not. I can't actually remember, but we'll see. All right, Jennifer. So if people want to find you online, where can they find you?
Well, my blog, which I should be updating in the next few days since I have something new to put in there.
Yes.
teachtravellearn.com, and also have a YouTube channel, Teach Travel Learn. And Jackie, I know people can find you in a number of places.
Yes, that is true.
Such as
you can find me. First of all, you can find the podcast or eslactivity.org/podcast. And then I'm also on YouTube. I've actually just started making some new YouTube videos. So you can just search for Jackie Bolen and find me there. And I'll also put the link on that eslactivity.org website. Maybe a good place to end. So thanks for listening, everyone. If you like this podcast, please leave us a review. Please give it a share. Please tell your friends. And we'll catch you next time, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.